The soft scent of the flowers on the table blended with the rich aroma of the roast that Helena had prepared with such care. The white linen tablecloth was perfectly aligned, the silverware gleamed, and the wine glasses reflected the chandelier's elegant light. Daniel came down the stairs, adjusting the sleeve of his dress shirt. The expensive watch on his wrist glistened. He smiled when he saw her, walked over, and kissed her forehead. "It's perfect," he praised. "As always." Helena smiled back, but something in his expression unsettled her. His smile seemed forced, as if he were trying to hide something. She pushed the thought aside. This wasn't the time to imagine problems. Soon the guests arrived, 3 of Daniel's colleagues and their wives. Laughter filled the house, wine flowed freely, and conversations stayed lively. Helena noticed that, although Daniel was surrounded by friends, he seemed distant. He smiled at the right moments, laughed when everyone else did, but his eyes kept shifting toward his phone on the sideboard. Every time the screen lit up, Daniel would glance at it discreetly, pretending to check something trivial. It was only after the guests had left that Helena decided to ask. "What's going on?" she asked, crossing her arms as he cleared the wine glasses from the table. "Nothing," he answered too quickly. "I know you. You've been acting strange since yesterday." Daniel let out a muffled laugh. "I'm just tired, that's all. Things at the company have been a nightmare." He turned his back, but Helena saw him grab his phone and subtly delete a message. That night, while Daniel slept soundly beside her, Helena crept downstairs without making a sound. She grabbed his phone, but the screen was locked. She hesitated. She had never gone through her husband's things before, but something about that night had left a knot in her chest. After a few seconds, she tried a code she knew he often used, their anniversary date. The screen unlocked. Helena's heart raced. In the message list, there was a conversation with an unidentified number. The most recent message read, "This can't go on." Below it, Daniel had replied, "I'll take care of it. Don't worry." Helena's stomach turned. Who was that person? What wasn't supposed to continue? The next day, she tried to act as if nothing was wrong. She prepared breakfast, and as usual, Daniel dressed impeccably for work. Before leaving, he kissed her quickly on the cheek. "Love, I'll be home late today," he said casually. Helena just nodded. A few hours later, the doorbell rang. When she opened the door, a man in a dark suit stood at the front of the house. He seemed nervous. "Is Daniel home?" the man asked. "No," Helena replied. "Who are you?" "Alan," the man answered quickly. I'm just a friend." Before Helena could press further, he turned and hurried away. Later that evening, when Daniel returned home, Helena waited until he went upstairs to shower. Then she went to his office. She rummaged through drawers, checked papers, and found a folder hidden at the back of the closet. Inside were receipts and financial documents she didn't recognize, large amounts of money, recent transactions, and a signature that looked like hers, but wasn't. The sound of the bathroom door opening made her rush back to the living room. When Daniel appeared, Helena forced herself to smile as if nothing had happened. But that night, while he slept, she lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. Something was happening, and now she knew it wasn't just her imagination. Helena could no longer ignore the signs. Ever since she had found those papers in Daniel's office, her stomach had been in a constant state of tension. She didn't want to jump to conclusions, but every detail was starting to fall into place in a disturbing way. The next morning, she watched Daniel as he got ready to leave. He was more rushed than usual, changing his tie 3 times, as if his mind was somewhere else. "You've been acting different," she commented, trying to sound casual. "It's just work," he replied without even looking at her. "Nothing you need to worry about." And then he left, without even saying a proper goodbye. Helena waited until he turned the corner and minutes later grabbed her car keys. She knew that man named Alan might have answers. He had mentioned being a friend, but something about the way he had looked at the house, nervous, almost anxious, suggested otherwise. She drove to the address she had found among the papers in Daniel's hidden folder. It was a small, discreet office in the city center. "I'm looking for Alan," she told the receptionist. The woman gave her a suspicious look. He's in a meeting. I'll wait, Helena replied firmly. 40 minutes later, Alan walked out the door. As soon as he saw Helena, his face went pale. We need to talk, she said firmly. Alan led her to a nearby cafe. They sat at a table in the corner, away from others. If you came here to threaten me, Alan began. Threaten you? Helena interrupted. I just want to know what's going on with my husband. Alan took a deep breath, running a hand down his face, clearly torn. Your husband, he's in a serious mess, he finally said. He made some risky investments and lost a lot of money. A lot. How much is a lot? Helena asked, feeling her chest tighten. He owes over $200,000. Helena's head spun. He didn't tell me anything, she murmured. Because he still believes he can fix it on his own. But he can't, Alan said grimly. The bank is one step away from starting legal action. If he doesn't pay soon, you could lose the house. Helena felt the cup tremble in her hand. And who's AS? She asked, remembering the mysterious message. Alan hesitated. I have no idea, he lied. But Helena noticed the way his eyes shifted toward the window, nervous. When she returned home, Helena tried to convince herself that Daniel would tell her the truth, that this whole situation had a reasonable explanation, that he trusted her enough to open up. But that night, he came home late and smelling like alcohol. How was work? She asked, testing him. It was fine, Daniel replied, tossing his briefcase onto the couch and heading straight to the kitchen. Helena waited a moment before opening his briefcase. Among the papers and notes, she found a recent hotel receipt, dated 3 weeks earlier. The same week he had claimed to be away on a business trip. She couldn't hold it in any longer. You lied to me, she said when he returned to the living room. What? This receipt. Helena held up the paper. You said you were traveling for work, but you were staying at a hotel right here in the city. Why? Daniel froze for a moment. It's complicated, he said evasively. Then explain. He rubbed his face with both hands. I was trying to fix this mess without worrying you, Daniel said. His voice sounded tired but not honest. I made some investments that didn't work out. And who is AS? Daniel hesitated. Just an old friend from school, he said. He lent me money when I needed it. And now he's demanding you pay him back? It's not exactly like that, Daniel cut in. Helena knew he wasn't telling her the whole truth. I just wanted you to trust me, she said, her voice breaking. I do trust you, Daniel shot back, but his voice sounded forced. No, you don't, Helena replied, because if you did, you wouldn't be hiding this from me. Without another word, Helena went upstairs and locked herself in the bathroom. She could hear Daniel pacing downstairs, dragging his feet like he didn't know what to do either. That night, while he slept, Helena stayed awake. The answers Daniel had given her weren't enough. Something was still missing, and she knew she couldn't pretend everything was fine any longer. In the following days, Daniel seemed to be trying hard to act normal. He tried to be affectionate, made a point of coming home earlier from work, and even brought flowers one evening, something Helena hadn't seen in months. But this behavior only made her more suspicious. He was clearly trying to distract her. Helena didn't know what was worse, the lies or the silence. On a Friday afternoon, Daniel left saying he had an important meeting and that he might not make it home for dinner. As soon as he left, Helena grabbed her car keys and drove straight to Alan's office. This time she didn't ask for permission. She walked straight into his office. You lied to me, she said, closing the door behind her. Alan was sitting behind his desk but quickly stood up. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do, Helena interrupted, tossing a printed copy of the email she had found in Daniel's computer trash folder onto the desk. It was a message from someone with the initials AS, threatening to expose everything if Daniel didn't pay soon. Who is this person? Alan looked at the email and then at her. I shouldn't be getting involved in this. Alan, please, Helena pleaded, her voice faltering. I just want to understand what's happening with my husband. Alan sighed and dropped back into his chair. AS is Andrew Sullivan. Who is he? Someone who lent Daniel money. Not in a very legal way, Alan said, hesitating before continuing. Daniel was desperate. He invested heavily in a deal that didn't work out. When he realized he was about to lose everything, he borrowed money from Andrew Sullivan to cover the loss. But Andrew isn't exactly someone who tolerates delays. And now he's threatening Daniel. Not just him, Alan added. It seems your husband also forged some documents to get extra credit. If that comes to light, he could end up in jail. Helena froze. This can't be happening. Look, I'm only telling you this because I think you need to protect yourself. I like Daniel, but he's acting like he can fix this on his own. And he won't. That night, when Daniel returned home, Helena tried to stay calm. She didn't want him to know that she knew everything. He acted as if nothing had happened, turned on the TV, opened a beer, and casually asked if she wanted to order pizza. "Who is Andrew Sullivan?" Helena asked suddenly. Daniel paused in the middle of a sip. "Where did you hear that name?" "Does it matter?" He set the bottle down on the table and crossed his arms. "Alan came looking for you, didn't he?" "It wasn't him who came looking for me," Helena said. "I went to him because you don't have the courage to tell me anything." Daniel let out a bitter laugh and shook his head. "I'm trying to protect you." "Protect me?" Helena scoffed bitterly. "You're trying to protect yourself." Daniel was silent for a moment. "I'm going to fix this," he said at last. "I just need time." "Time?" Helena felt her anger rising. "You forged my signature, Daniel. I found documents with my name on them." "It was just to get a loan processed faster," he murmured, looking increasingly defeated. "You forged my signature," she repeated, incredulous, "and you didn't even have the courage to tell me." Daniel ran his hands down his face, exhausted. "I know I messed up, okay? I know, but I'll fix it." "How?" Helena asked. "How are you going to pay off a huge debt with what money?" Daniel didn't answer. "I don't know what to believe anymore," she murmured. "Trust me," he pleaded, and for a second Helena almost believed him. Almost. But when he went upstairs to bed, Helena returned to his office. She knew he was still hiding something. She rummaged through drawers, checked shelves, and then, behind a pile of old papers, she found a crumpled envelope. Inside was a copy of a court document, a summons to appear in court. The hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks from now. Helena gripped the paper tightly in her hands. Now there was no doubt. Daniel wasn't just dragging himself down. He was dragging her with him. Helena spent the weekend in silence, trying to process everything. The hotel receipt, Andrew Sullivan's threats, the massive debt, and now a court summons. Daniel was hiding more than she could have imagined, and with each discovery it felt like he was sinking deeper. On Monday morning, Helena made a decision. She tucked the summons into her bag, grabbed her car keys, and drove straight to the office of an old college friend, Amanda Gray. Amanda now worked as a lawyer specializing in financial fraud. "I need you to find out how far this goes," Helena asked, handing over the documents she had collected. Amanda examined the papers for a few minutes, then looked up. "Helena, this is serious. If those signatures really were forged and Daniel doesn't pay this debt in time, you could lose not only your house, he could end up facing criminal charges." "I know," Helena murmured, crossing her arms, "but he won't tell me anything. He keeps pretending everything's fine." "That's normal," Amanda said. "Desperate people cling to any hope they can, even if it doesn't exist." "He's not a desperate person," Helena replied, but her own voice sounded uncertain. Amanda paused. "There's something else you need to know. Andrew Sullivan. He's not just any creditor. He's known for threatening and manipulating people in debt. Daniel got involved with the worst possible person." A chill ran down Helena's spine. "And now you need to protect yourself. If he forged your signature and the banks prove it, you could get dragged into this too." Helena returned home feeling even more restless than before. As soon as she opened the door, she found Daniel sitting on the couch with a beer in his hand. He turned his head when he heard her come in and smiled as if nothing was wrong. "Where were you?" he asked. "Taking care of some things," Helena replied flatly. Daniel frowned. "You're not trusting me." "Should I?" He slowly stood up and set the bottle down on the table. "I'm trying to fix this," he said, his voice harsher than usual. "I just need you to let me handle things my way." "Your way?" Helena let out a bitter laugh. "Your way got me caught up in fraud, forged my signature, and buried us in impossible debt. I was trying to protect you, Daniel exploded. By lying to me? I did what I thought was right at the time. And now we're about to lose the house, Helena shot back, her voice shaking. Daniel fell silent, avoiding her eyes. I'll fix this, he muttered. How? She insisted. How are you going to fix this? He didn't answer. He just grabbed his car keys and left, slamming the door behind him. That night, Helena tried to sleep, but her mind wouldn't stop racing. Something still didn't make sense. If Daniel was really trying to pay off the debt, why was he still acting so mysterious? Around 2 in the morning, she went downstairs. The folder Daniel usually kept in his office was gone. Helena began searching elsewhere. Drawers, shelves, even the coat closet in the hallway. That's where she found it, hidden behind a pile of old sweaters. Inside the folder was another document that caught her eye, a contract signed by Daniel and by Andrew Sullivan. But that wasn't all. Attached to the contract was a thick envelope filled with photographs. Helena pulled out one of the pictures and froze. The photo showed Daniel sitting at a restaurant with a woman she didn't recognize. They were sitting too close, leaning toward each other as if sharing a secret, or something more. Helena flipped through the other photos, more meetings, more dinners. In one of them, the woman was touching Daniel's hand. Helena felt the air leave her lungs. When Daniel came home, Helena was sitting on the couch, holding the photos in her hand. "What is this?" she asked, her voice firm. Daniel looked at the pictures and seemed to turn pale. "It's not what you think." "Then explain it," she challenged. She's Andrew's sister," he said hesitantly. "He threatened me, Helena, said that if I didn't pay soon, he'd send someone to take care of me. She showed up saying she could help me negotiate with him." "And you believed her?" "I didn't have a choice," Daniel replied, frustrated. "She said she could convince Andrew to give me more time, but then she started making demands." "What kind of demands?" "She wanted me to lie. She wanted me to say that one of my clients lost money because of the bank, and not because of my mistake." "And did you do it?" "No, not yet." Helena felt a mixture of anger and relief. "Then why didn't you tell me?" "Because you'd want to fix it, and that would only make things worse." "And what do you think is happening now?" she snapped. "You lost control of this situation a long time ago." Daniel lowered his eyes. "I'm going to the police," Helena said firmly. "No," Daniel said quickly, grabbing her arm. "If you involve the police now, Andrew will find another way to retaliate." "Then what do you expect me to do? Pretend this isn't happening?" "I just need time," Daniel said, almost pleading. Helena took a deep breath, feeling the weight of exhaustion pressing on her shoulders. "You have 1 week," she said, stepping away from him. "After that, I'll fix this my way." In the following days, the house was quieter than ever. Daniel tried to act as if nothing was happening, but Helena knew he was just buying time. His tired expression, the phone calls he took away from her, and his nervous glances at the window only fueled her suspicions. On Wednesday morning, Helena received a letter. There was no return address, just her name handwritten on the envelope. When she opened it, she found a short and direct message. "I know you're trying something. This could end much worse for you. A.S." Helena's hands trembled. She tucked the letter into a drawer and tried to stay calm, but she knew this was a clear and dangerous warning. That night, while Daniel was in the shower, Helena grabbed his phone and found another message from Andrew Sullivan. "Your wife is getting involved where she shouldn't. Deal with it or I will." Her stomach sank. The next morning, Helena decided to act. She went to the bank where Daniel had taken out the loans and requested a meeting with a manager. Using the documents she had collected, she explained the situation, including the forgery of her signature. "We'll open an investigation," the manager said, "but if it's proven that you didn't sign those documents, you won't be held responsible." Despite the momentary relief, Helena knew that wouldn't solve the problem with Andrew Sullivan. Late in the afternoon, Daniel came home from work earlier than usual. He was pale and sweaty, as if he'd just run a marathon. "We need to talk," he said, dropping his briefcase on the couch. Helena crossed her arms. Now you want to talk? Daniel ran his hands down his face, looking exhausted. Andrew, he's getting more aggressive. I went to see him today and told him I can't pay right now. He threatened you. I already know, Helena said firmly. Daniel stared at her, surprised. What do you mean, you know? Helena went to the drawer, grabbed the anonymous letter and tossed it on the table. He sent this. Daniel picked up the paper and his expression hardened. I should have told you sooner, he murmured. But I was trying to protect you. That excuse doesn't work anymore, Helena cut in. I went to the bank today. They're investigating everything. If you think you can just ignore this and hope it goes away, you're wrong. You went to the bank. Daniel sounded irritated now. Helena, that's only going to make things worse. Worse? She stepped closer to him. We're about to lose the house. You forged documents using my name. How could it possibly get worse? Andrew isn't someone you can just ignore, Daniel snapped back. He's not just some ordinary loan shark. I'm not going to sit around waiting for him to come after me, Helena interrupted. If you won't do something, I will. That night, Daniel left again, saying he needed to sort things out. Helena didn't believe him. Determined, she grabbed her car keys and followed him. She watched as Daniel parked in front of a dimly lit bar in one of the city's rougher neighborhoods. He went inside, and Helena waited a few minutes before following him. Inside the bar, Daniel was sitting at a table in the back, face to face with Andrew Sullivan. The man was tall, with neatly cut grey hair and a cold expression. He gestured firmly as Daniel sat quietly, looking increasingly tense. Helena hid behind a partition, listening as best she could. I warned you, Andrew was saying. Either you pay or things are going to get a lot worse for you and for her. There's no need to involve my wife, Daniel insisted. I just need more time. Andrew gave a low chuckle. Time isn't an option anymore. That night, Daniel returned home looking defeated. Helena didn't wait for him to explain. I saw you with him, she said as soon as he walked in. Daniel froze in the doorway. I'm calling the police tomorrow, she continued. How you can get angry, you can yell, you can do whatever you want, but I'm not living with this threat anymore. Daniel hesitated, then let out a heavy sigh and shook his head. All right, he muttered. All right. The next morning, Daniel went with Helena to the police station. He confessed everything, the failed investments, the borrowed money, and the threats. The police advised Helena to stay somewhere else for a few days for her safety. Later that afternoon, she was packing a bag when she found a letter on the bed. It was from Daniel. Helena, I know I've disappointed you, and nothing I say now can fix that. I just want you to know that I'm willing to face whatever it takes to make things right. I shouldn't have lied to you, but I lied because I thought I couldn't bear to see you disappointed in me. I wanted to be the man you deserve, but I ended up being the man you had to save. I'm sorry. If one day you can believe in me again, I'll be here. With love, Daniel. Helena didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in weeks, she felt that the truth had finally come out from under the surface, and that she could finally breathe again. A few weeks had passed since Daniel had confessed everything. The bank's investigation progressed, and thanks to Helena's statement proving she hadn't signed any documents, she was officially cleared from the case. Daniel, on the other hand, wasn't as fortunate. He was forced to sell his car and part of their savings to pay off some of the debt. The remaining amount was split into installments, a payment plan that would take years to complete. Andrew Sullivan, realizing the police were involved, backed off. No one heard from him again. Slowly, life started to return to normal, but the silence between Helena and Daniel lingered. They slept in the same bed, ate dinner at the same table, but their conversations were short and mechanical. One night, while Helena was applying lotion to her hands in the bathroom, she saw Daniel's reflection in the doorway. He looked lost. Are you okay? She asked. He hesitated. He took a deep breath. I know things aren't good between us, and I'll understand if you don't want this anymore. If you want to leave, I'll understand. Helena met his eyes through the mirror. I don't want to leave, she replied, but that doesn't mean everything's okay. Daniel lowered his head and leaned against the doorframe. I messed everything up, didn't I? Helena took a deep breath. No, "But you disappointed me," she said honestly. "And that's even worse." He nodded slowly. "I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to fix this," he murmured. "I know." They stood in silence for a moment, simply sharing the same space, as if they were finally beginning to find a way forward. In the weeks that followed, Helena noticed that Daniel was genuinely trying to change. He cut expenses, cancelled his expensive gym membership, and replaced fancy dinners with quiet evenings at home. They started talking more, and little by little, the wounds stopped hurting as much. One Sunday afternoon, while they were preparing lunch together, Helena was scrolling through her phone when Daniel approached. "Did you see this?" he asked, pointing to her screen. Helena opened Instagram and saw that he had posted a photo of the two of them on their front porch, smiling side by side. The caption read, "Things aren't always easy, but with the right person, you learn to move forward." "You posted this?" she asked, surprised. Daniel shrugged. "Everyone only posts the pretty side of life. I thought it wouldn't hurt to remind people that it's not always like that." Helena smiled, but with a hint of irony. "And you think people are going to realize that just from a cute caption?" "No," he admitted, "but it's a start." Helena chuckled softly and hugged him around the waist. "Okay, it's a start." Time passed, and to everyone else, they still seemed like the perfect couple. On social media, their photos showed well-prepared dinners, weekend getaways, and flawless smiles. Friends and colleagues continued to comment on how inspiring they were and how they completed each other perfectly. Certain, but only they knew what they had to carry day by day. The nights when they argued quietly so the neighbors wouldn't hear, the bills that had to be carefully calculated down to the last cent, the lingering tension every time the phone rang, fearing it could be a consequence of their past catching up with them. The life that seemed perfect kept unfolding, but now they knew that perfection is simply what people choose to show. In the end, everyone carries their own burdens. They had simply learned how to move forward, together.
What did you think of the story? Leave a comment below. Let us know which city you're watching from. Subscribe to the channel for more stories.